So thank you very much for attending. I would like, first of all, to go a little bit into the agenda. All of you have received recently some emails, and also the information is available on our website. As said, we would like to introduce during this workshop the development of the 5G-MAG reference tools for media. We have an agenda with 2 sessions. First one will explain the motivation, the logistics, and the collaboration framework around the 5G-MAG reference tools. There will be a second session in which actually we would like to hear from you. Well, if you would like to contribute on different aspects, on the design, on let's say development effort, on test vectors, and so on. So this is our agenda for today, and I will be accompanied by some 5G-MAG members: Thomas Stockhammer from Qualcomm, Johan Mika from ORS, and then also from by Daniel Silhavi from Fraunhofer Focus, who will be helping us in all the management of the development of the 5G-MAG reference tools. First of all, I would like to go through a very brief introduction about 5G Media Action Group for those that may not know yet about us. So the 5G Media Action Group, 5G-MAG, is an association bridging the media and ICT industries. So our activities are focused on different domains where we see media or where we see 5G being applied for media purposes. So that involves aspects in terms of production, media production, professional production, also contribution of content. Well, what generally we see on backpacks connected to the 5G network, well, different aspects, non-public networks, and so on. And then another side of the other part of the coin, which is distribution and consumption, where we see well, different applications, media streaming, 5G broadcast, and other aspects that come with 5G, and where we think well, the media industry can leverage the technology and obtain some benefits. So 5G-MAG is a members-driven association. We will speak more we will provide some more details afterwards, but basically, well, we have been recently established, and we are starting our activities in different fields, analyzing commercial aspects of the application of 5G to different scenarios, as we have mentioned, evaluating what the technology can do for the media industry, also influencing standards in terms of developing requirements for use cases, developing requirements in terms of how the media industry would expect using 5G for all these different scenarios. And one important aspect that we would like to foster is, well, to make some more steps from the standards towards actual deployment, commercialization, or implementation of the technology. And well, one of the activities that we are starting in that field is the implementation of the 5G-MAG reference tools, which is what we are going to talk about today. So for this workshop, we have this agenda. I have already shown it, and we have these 2 sessions, but you may know that we have circulated a questionnaire in advance, in particular for those of you that have registered well in advance. I think we submitted an email. The last email was sent this morning. I will go quickly to the chat, and we'll circulate again this URL so that you can fill in your, let's say, your ideas and your thoughts around the different questions that we were asking here. Let me come back to my screen. So in the meantime, you can have a look at the questionnaire that is just on the chat. You can fill it. You can fill it in. We will go to see more results during session 2. But first of all, we would like this session to be interactive in the sense that, well, if you have any questions and you have any comments, you can use the chat for questions. You can raise your hand, use the button in Zoom in order to let's say to be on the queue for questions and so on. And one of the first things we would like to do is to hear from you, so who you are, right? And for this, well, we have some initial results from the questionnaires in which we have asked, well, in which areas of this development of the reference tools you would like to contribute. We have some results here, but we would also like to understand for those present here that have not yet filled in the form, well, where do you come from? So if you could tell us, for instance, in the chat, what's your background, if you are a 3GPP member, if you are a developer, if you come from the industry, from research, academia, and so on. Well, I think that would be very helpful for us on a first introduction to know more about you. And secondly, since we have already some answers to the questionnaires, as you see on the screen, well, I would like to go a little bit into the participants list and to find some people that have answered the questionnaires, if they could speak up and very briefly explain us the motivation to be here. So, for instance, I see Christoph Burdinat from ATEM. So, well, you have answered the questionnaire. So, if you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your interest in this activity.
Hello, Jordi. Hello, everyone. Yes, if I remember well, we have answered, but we have checked the test by streaming box. So that is to say, we are currently working on this side of all our video encoding specialties. I mean, we are currently working on a set of a set of multicast protocols, and we would be glad to be able to provide some test streams for multicast over IP.
Thank you very much. So we will go into more details perhaps in the second session. So thank you. I also see Menno bot from One to Many. So Menno, would you tell us, let's say, your motivation or your interest in this activity?
It's probably contributing existing code and perhaps development resources, but it's complicated because our company got taken over by another company and they have not given me a direction on whether they want to go with the EBMS, whether they'll continue this and they want to contribute part of this project and with how many resources. And since everybody is on holiday, I do not get an answer on that.
Okay, but at least you are here and you can inform.
But I'm here, yeah. I will still try to follow it, yeah.
Excellent. So I also I saw also some response from Andreas Dotzler from Kadami. So I don't know if you are in the call, but yes, you are. So,
I am.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Andreas Dotzler. I'm CEO and co-founder of Kadami. We are a small company from Munich building caching solutions and media distribution solutions on a higher layer. They are well adapted in other wireless networks like Wi-Fi and fixed networks, but we are struggling to enter markets in cellular networks where the adoption for multi-broadcast and broadcast is not well available. So that's why we're interested in engaging to bring multicast and broadcast services to cellular networks so we can create some market opportunities for our solutions there.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I also see on the list Thorsten Heffet from University of Saarland. So hello.
Hi, can you hear me just to make sure that the microphone is working?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, we're, as you already said, we're one of those stemming from academia, but I have had quite a lively past in industry and was 20 years, nearly 20 years member of the DVB steering board. So we're still doing many things in relation to media streaming. We're also coordinating 5G CampusNet testbeds. You know that the German regulator has reserved certain frequencies for campus networks. and we are exploring certain things. My answer to the questionnaire was also contributing existing code and development resources. We have some things that we have implemented in larger contexts, but we feel could fit very well into the 5G-MAG suites. For example, just as one of the examples, we have what we call transparent transmission segmentation, which is a thing that really separates end-to-end protocols a little bit in the sense of performance enhancing proxies, but more intelligent. And this decouples the wireless part from the wired part up to the edge. And yeah, this is available in source code. We are also very actively very active in estimating highly selective channels, highly selective as well in the frequency domain as in the time domain, so large Doppler shifts, and to compensate for them, also something that might be very interesting in that scenario.
So thank you very much, Thorsten. I think we can later on discuss a little bit more. I see we are on time, so I see also Ali Began. I think you are from Turkey. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Hello, everyone. I am affiliated with the Özyeğin University in Istanbul, but I do also do some consulting work, and currently I'm consulting for Comcast, NBC Universal. I've been doing some work in MPEG Industry Forum and similar places, and have been involved in streaming since my PhD years. So I would, I'm here to learn about this organization. I heard about it from some friends, but I don't have much information. And I would like to contribute in any way I can in terms of especially client development and, some test frameworks and things like that. So happy to be here.
Thank you very much. So, well, with this, we have done a first overview. I think in the session 2, we can open the floor for more comments and for sure for more discussion on the different aspects of the architecture and so on. But well, since we are perfect on time, I would like to hand over now to session 1, and we have a first presentation on the motivation and scope of the 5G-MAG reference tools that will be provided by Thomas Stockhammer. So Thomas, please go ahead.
Jordi, thank you. I hope you can see my screen, you can hear me, and you can see me on camera. Okay, so I have the honor to basically introduce quickly how we got here and why we did this. And you can blame it on me that you're here and that we started this, but I would like, before we go ahead with like a bit of background, really send my appreciations to 5G-MAG, Jordi and Eva, and also to Johan, to have taken this adventure and starting this, because kicking this off was a bit of an effort. We are glad that we are here now and so many people join. This is the start. This is surely not the end. So we are at the very beginning, and from here on, I hope we have contributors into this project. So I want to give you a bit of a motivation and scope where I started it, not from a detailed technical perspective, but more like how does this activity, how we envision it to fit into some context. And as we talk about 5G and 5G-MAG is closely related to what 3GP does. So how does it fit into this operation and what 5G-MAG's role can be? And then basically why we initiate the work to do something on a joint software development. I stole some slides from my fellow colleague, Frédéric Gabin, who is the SA4 chairman, that have a bit of an idea of what 3GP is. 3GP is a group that is basically doing standardization, but it's a part of obviously of a large innovation cycle where you obviously preliminary have inventions, proof of concept, also requirements coming from commercial context. And then there's the next step, which goes into the trials and commercialization. So this is kind of a cycle, as you see below. And what basically the focus in 3GP is doing the specifications, potentially being preceded by studies. The system is characterized by a number of standardized interfaces. It's not a description how you deploy it and so on. This once in a while makes 3GP specifications very inaccessible, right? Because there's like a list of numbers and specification. It's very difficult to understand what is relevant, what is not, and so on and so on. And 3GP with especially with 5G is entering into verticals. I have a bit more on the next slide. So we want to basically bring this closer to these verticals. The standardization approach enables an interoperable multi-vendor idea. And obviously the idea of mass market. I hope you all can contribute towards this efforts. Okay, so this is just a list of what's happening in 3GP, and 3GP is not by itself. When you see there's organizational partners, these are globally territory distributed from the US to Asia and Europe and different parts there. There's over 700 companies contributing. There's also market representation partners, and those basically come in with a project with requirements from the markets. And as you see, recently 5G-MAG got a market representation partner of 3GPP. Then there's projects around 5G, and then there's also another aspect, which is certification bodies, right? And there's a lot of liaisons with different organizations. You might, for example, recognize DVB and MPEG and so on. So 3GP works not isolated, it works integrated into a larger environment. And so by picking up 5G-MAG, then basically we want to frame a bit the idea how this relates to 3GP work and what 5G-MAG would want to do differently. Very quickly, 3GP works on a stage approach and has different groups. On the service level, there is a group which is SA1, which basically deals with service requirements. It's not commercial requirements as you might be used to if you're in DVB. It's more like technically oriented requirements that leads into architecture and also spills then into groups. And one group where several of the people here are involved is the whole issue related to media distribution. And then there is more details basically going into what is called the CT group, the core technologies. They go into protocols and coding onto a radio and system level. So basically the specifications in this domain basically are likely relevant for the cases we're going to discuss, but there's also a radio part, which is not explicit here, which basically deals with the radio interfaces. So 3GP operates on releases, and these releases are built in roughly 1.5 years. Release 17, that's the currently active working one, is taking a bit longer through the pandemic. This has been extended. So all of those releases are 5G contributions. And basically, the expectation for us is to, right now in the projects, to probably work on release 16, because that is the one, the latest one complete with the specification. Release 17 will take roughly another year until completion. Will surely also bring new aspects into the work we're expecting to do. So this is about 3GPP. So how would we see 5G-MAG into there? So 5G-MAG should basically be viewed as an organization that can bring input into 3GPP, but at the same time also take the deliverers, specifications and so on provided by 3GP and bring it back to the industry again. So it's basically a pre-standardization work and a post-standardization work being considered. 5G-MAG already started on the earlier part, basically by providing requirements, for example, to release 18, and has done post-standardization work by promotions, workshop, explainers, and so on. What we believe there is a significant benefit still to be done is in the area of interoperability, developer programs, software and reference tools. 3GP does not have programs like this, at least not that I am aware of. In maybe there's specific groups doing some aspects, but typically not. So that's the idea how we want to position 5G-MAG, and as said, so you will find a lot of information already on the green marked part. This group is about what is here marked in yellow. So from a high level objectives, what do we want to do? Well, we want to create deliverables, so make it tangible, build a developer community, so people who want to exchange ideas, and I have a bit more later, make the whole idea around 5G and media tangible. So not just having specifications and ideas, but bring it to something that can be interoperably implemented. Create an identity around this effort, right? And I will give you an idea of what I mean by this one afterwards. And create new opportunities. I mean, by meeting people, by having tools, the opportunities are manifold. So new research projects, students working on this, combination with other technologies. So the opportunities are all yours. This is a seed for those aspects. Two specific aspects, what we viewed and how we started this. Basically, deliverables, what we consider is basically tools in fact that support 5G-based media distribution. And we basically started with reference tools and prototypes that really focus on implementing specifications to conform to the specifications, but obviously fill the gaps that the specification goes beyond. And that should be allowed for testing, used in trials, used potentially in production services. It needs to be portable and flexible, and we would like have reference implementations. And we have also at the starting point saying we need to have software license and contributions that allow that it's commonly acceptable and also allows usability. We expect that out of these efforts, we can do demonstrations, trials, and other usages are not prohibited. There is, for example, research, new developments. The focus is a bit on the earlier parts, as said. The second main aspect is building a developer community. And I'm not a developer. I just write some Python scripts once in a while, but I'm just copying from somewhere. So I'm just speaking more what I'm observing, and I believe what is important. Developer community means really let's connect people, and connecting people means not sending emails around. It's more how developers connect. And Daniel will give an intro of what we have set up here. Exchange ideas, right? And ideas can be new ideas, implementation ideas. Find support for your implementations, complement each other. So I have a problem here, can you help me? Exchange knowledge on technologies, right? And also on coding tools, coding practices, and so on. So learn, right? Again, with Daniel coming up later, we have a very good manager for all of this. So there's also a learning curve involved in this. I believe the community is very important. Have a beer and a pizza together. So we do this quite often, and the role model is what we did in Dash-F and Dash.js development. So the social aspect is really important as well. And we're looking for people, right? So that's what we hear. We want people and faces. That's what I envision, like in half a year, in a year, that we meet maybe with more people as we do with Dash.js. It needs to be backed by people who are know each other, trust each other, and you can get part of something exciting. So that's what I want to send off as an initial message, and I hope we can now move into some concrete delivers. Thank you. Forty, back to you. Other questions?
That was muted. Thank you, Thomas. So I would like to move to another aspect that we have considered very carefully, which is on the framework for collaboration. I mean, we are going to develop, of course, software, and we thought carefully about this, and we have something to tell about software license, a contribution agreement for contributing code, and so on. So I will jump directly to this, and then afterwards, Daniel will continue with some of the logistics, more focused on the actual development of the tools. So basically, and as Thomas has said, our objective here is, let's say, to build this community, and to build this community, we should have, let's say, a good model in place that does not discourage contributions on code, for instance, due to IPR issues and so on. So we would like to provide First of all, an efficient and operative development environment, for which we count on Daniel. We would like to foster the implementation and testing of these 5G on these 5G features that, let's say, are of interest, in particular to our members, but also to 3GPP and the community. We'd like to establish these open source software tools so that people can use them for research, trials, but also going some steps beyond. And as I said, we need a good license model that at least what can be is acceptable for especially big companies with let's say with a big IPR portfolio. But first of all, in order to understand how this activity and the developers community, the developers group, and all of this fits into the 5G-MAG activities. So, well, we have in 5G-MAG, and if you go to the website, you can find more information about this. We have several work groups, right? We have a work group focused at the moment on content distribution technologies, right? So what 5G can do for content distribution in terms of the 3GPP specs and in terms of the 5G ecosystem. So under this group, well, this activity will be placed, right? So we will have a task leader to, let's say, manage the internal roadmap, for instance, what our members would like to see implemented, well, how this fits with the standards, with the current development, and so on. And then we will have the other part, which is the development coordination and the developers community, where, well, all of you 5G-MAG and non-5G-MAG members are invited to participate, and if you wish, also to contribute with code, right? In order to contribute with code, with guarantees in terms of IPR and so on, well, that's why we have two things. First thing, we need to explain the software license that we have picked for our tools. And another thing is, well, in order that everybody is aware of what the license is about, and also in order to identify clearly what is your contribution on the code, we also have a contribution license agreement for those willing to contribute, let's say, with code. So all the details about the software license that we are going to follow will be published in our website soon. I think we are expecting something around mid-August, so around the 16th of August. All the information will be on the website, so keep tuned, and we will stay tuned, and we will also send an email once the documents are ready. But basically, we have developed our this public license, which is a modified version of the Apache 2.0, which basically contains a patent clause that allows contributors, let's say, to make a patent license available to third parties under front terms. The 5G-MAG reference tools code, in that case, is free for non-commercial and for academic research purposes, so research projects and so on. And then the idea is that contributors which own patents, well, are still able to contribute to the 5G-MAG reference tools code while being able to keep their patent rights, right? So, well, we believe with this we can ensure that everybody, and especially, as I said, big companies with big IPR portfolio, feel comfortable to contribute, which is in the end what we want, right? We want contributions, and we want to, I mean, we want to develop this community with as many developers as possible. So attached to this, or let's say also in our website, there will be information about the contributor license agreement. So if you want to contribute with code, then we need to be well, you need to be aware of the license of the code, and also we want to clearly identify what is your contribution to the 5G-MAG reference tools repositories, so that, well, if you have, as I said, IPR issues and so on, that everything is clear, and that you feel comfortable contributing to the activity. So here then we have to separate two things. So how to participate? Well, Daniel is going to explain a little bit more, but there will be developers group regular calls. You could download, use the reference tool software. You could provide feedback on the code. You could identify and raise issues. That's possible. Let's say everybody can participate. And in addition, if you want to contribute with code, well, we will explain all this setup, but ideally you should download and read the 5G-MAG public license that backs the code. You should sign and return this contribution license agreement that basically is stating, well, or is explaining what the license is about and making comfortable, as I said, in terms of IPR, that you can contribute. And then once this is done, you will get access as contributor to GitHub. So that's something that we wanted to explain. And as I said, all the details will be found on our website. So if you go to 5gmag.com/reference-tools, you will find, well, we go on summer break, but you will find quite soon more information. And of course, we are at your disposal in case you have any questions and so on. So this is more or less the setup. And as I said, more information will come to our website. I don't know if there are questions. I mean, we have a Q&A just at the end of this session. Feel free to launch any question on the chat in the meantime. If not, we go to Daniel, which will continue explaining the development setup. All yours, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. There was a question by Paul. Maybe while I set up my slides, you can comment on that. So the question was, are these agreement and license already used elsewhere? I think Thomas just answered in the chat.
Right. So the setup is very similar to Open Interface, and therefore, I mean, we know that the community there is big in terms of contributors. So I think, I mean, everybody will have to read and understand everything, but I think we are on the safe side in that aspect.
Great, thank you, Holly. So you should be able to see my slides. If not, please let me know. First, I also want to say thank you all for joining. It's great to see almost 90 people on the call. I think it's a very good foundation to build something really useful and something that covers pretty much everything we want to cover. So as Holly mentioned at the beginning, so my name is Daniel Davi. I'm working for Fraunhofer Focus in Berlin, and I've been the lead developer of the Dash.js project for almost 2 years now. So a lot of the stuff I will explain on the next few slides is really based on what we are doing in Dash.js and on the well-established workflows we have in Dash.js. And to start off, I want to mention that we will probably have 3 different repositories in this project, mainly focused on the different areas of the components or where the components are located. And this will become much clearer when Johan is presenting the architecture later on. But we basically want to group the different projects in terms of the client. So everything that is client related will be located in a single project or even in sub-projects. Then everything that is related to the broadcast server, to the head end in another repository. And then the radio access network components and everything related to that also in a different repository. And ideally, we can focus mainly on the first 2 parts, so the server and the client part, and reuse existing projects or reuse existing platforms for the radio access network part. As I mentioned at the start, so we will pretty much follow the -if-js model for development. This is to make sure that we ensure alignment with the 5G-MAG roadmap and also the different specifications we are relying on. So just to mention 2 3GPP specifications, ETSI documents, all this should be aligned with what we are doing in terms of code. We obviously also want to maintain a certain code quality, which is important for people to contribute and to make sure that everyone who's starting with the project has an easy access to the code, and it's not hard to start actually doing development. And obviously also on the roadmap is the continuous improvement. So we want to improve and add new components over time. A key fact is that the contributions should really come from 5G-MAG members and from external contributors. So my main job will be to pretty much coordinate the development, and the actual code should be coming from external and 5G-MAG members. So that's our ultimate goal. So we will use GitHub for the code control of the project, and we already set up a GitHub organization, which is called 5G-MAG. And the specific GitHub projects will follow. So right now, I encourage everyone to follow this GitHub organization, and then you get notifications whenever we set a new project or we upload some code to the specific projects or repositories. External contributions are provided via pull requests. So this is the standard workflow when we're doing open source development. People usually create a fork of a specific repository, then do their changes on this fork, and then contribute that back as a pull request. And as a development coordinator, it's our job to make sure that this is specification compliant, so that everything we are merging back to the main code really is conforming to the specification. And obviously, we also need to ensure code quality and avoid functional problems. And in Dash.js, to give you an example, we have automated a lot of the stuff. So we have unit tests running in the background. We have linting tests running in the background, also functional tests. And whenever we get a pull request, this is automatically checked against the test base we have. And if everything runs through, then we can manually check the code for specification or potential, for specification compliance or potential problems. Another important aspect is the version management. So we will do or are planning to do like monthly or releases every 2 months, obviously assigning a release version to each of the releases and making that available on GitHub with the release logs. So everyone can check out a specific version of the different repositories and projects. For issue tracking, we usually allow people to create issues. This can be a bug report, it can be a feature request, it can be something totally different. And usually we put some labels on the issues to know exactly what kind of issue this is. So for instance, if it's a feature request, if it's a bug report, if it has high priority or low priority, and we can directly comment on those issues if there are any questions or problems that need to be discussed. There's also a great feature on GitHub, which is called discussions. And you can think of this a bit like Stack Overflow. So everything that is not really suitable for an issue can be discussed in such a thread, and they will remain open pretty much forever, and people can check if there are any questions they might have themselves, which are also already answered in the discussion thread. And usually when we answer specific questions, then they're also marked as the main answer, so people know exactly, okay, in order to solve this problem, I need to do this. Another nice feature in GitHub are the projects, which allow you to group certain features. So you can create specific Kanban boards for major new features. So if you want to do an implementation of a specific major feature in a specific project, you would usually assign that to a project on GitHub, and then you can set up a Kanban board and know exactly which tasks to do and which tasks are missing in order to complete a specific feature. Yeah, so for the sprint planning, we usually assign features and bug reports to different milestones. Ideally, a milestone has a duration from 1 month to 1.5 months. This is at least what we're doing in Dash.js. We prioritize issues and feature requests and assign that to a specific sprint or milestone. And depending on the participation, this is something we experience in Dash.js as well. If you have a lot of issues, at some point they get outdated. So what we implemented here is a bot that stalls automatically. So whenever an issue is not dealt with or not responded in a way that maybe it's like no response for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, then it gets stored and it will automatically be closed at some point. Another important aspect is the integration with tools like CircleCI. So we should have some kind of continuous integration, continuous development framework in place to make sure that everything we can do automatically is done in automated fashion. This saves a lot of time and does not require us to do manual tasks for specific items that do not require manual attention. In terms of documentation, I thought about using the GitHub Wiki. This is also what we are doing in Dash.js right now. If at some point this gets we have too much pages in the GitHub Wiki, we can think about having a separate web page, for instance, also on GitHub called GitHub Pages for each of the projects. But I think a good start would be to document existing code and everything we have in the wiki of GitHub and the corresponding project. One important thing is also to provide samples for users. And I will show that how we do that in Dash.js in a minute. But if we have some kind of sample section, I can provide sample code. This really helps people in order to start with projects and start to implement or add code themselves. So for the coordination, and this is also important for the next steps. So we are planning to do monthly calls to sync on recent development activities. Maybe at the start, we even do that in a bi-weekly fashion, depending on how many people are contributing and how many different projects we need to maintain. We definitely want to align with activities of other working groups. And this is what Thomas also mentioned in his presentation. So it's important what is done in 3GPP, in DVB, in Etsy, and also in Dash.af. So we definitely have some synergy in Dash.af when we are using Dash.js as the main playback platform for the 5G-MAG reference tools. And we also set up a Slack channel. And I think everyone should be able to join this channel by now. So we want to establish a developer community, and whenever there are urgent questions, so just reach out to us in the Slack channel and we can discuss this there directly. I also put the relevant links on the bottom of the slides for everyone to check out. And with this, I want to quickly jump out of the slides and show you some concrete examples in Dash.js, because it will look quite similar what we are doing here in 5G-MAG. So for those who are not familiar with Dash.js, Dash.js is an open source Dash player provided by the Dash Industry Forum, and it's available on GitHub for free. So the same stuff we want to do here in 5G-MAG. And as I said, usually people create issues if there are specific feature requests or bug reports, and you can just use the issue tab on GitHub for that. One nice feature is that you can define certain templates for this. So we have created 2 templates, one for bug reports, one for feature requests. And whenever someone wants to open a bug report, he can click on Get Started and he gets like a template for this. So we provide information on what to fill out, what additional information to provide to us in order to be able to deal with this bug and handle that accordingly. And this is quite helpful when you want to get started with a certain project or want to raise something in the project. Then there are these pull requests. So usually people fork the project, they do implementations on their fork, and then they provide a pull request and want to merge that back to the main code. And to give you an example, we have automated a lot of stuff when people doing this. And this is what you can see down here, and I hope you can read it because my resolution is quite high. But basically, whenever someone opens a pull request, we automatically run unit tests against that pull request. We check the code quality, and we also run functional tests. And only if those 3 tests and automatic jobs succeed, then we are looking into this. Otherwise, we are telling people, okay, please fix this problem before we can look into this. Then we have the discussions, as I mentioned, so kind of similar to what Stack Overflow is doing. People can ask questions that do not really fit into issues, and then we have the chance to answer them here, mark them as the right answer, and other people that have the same question just need to check the thread and see how to solve a certain problem. The wiki, and this, maybe Dash.js is a good example that this can really grow over time. So as you can see here, we have 43 different pages. So I'm really thinking about having a separate web page for Dash.js at one point. But what I wanted to show basically is that it's nice to have a documentation on specific parts of the project. And I picked low latency streaming as an example because we have quite a long description.
I think we've lost Daniel. Yes, I think so. Okay, let's wait to see. At least you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
That's perfect.
So let's see if Daniel can reconnect. Otherwise, I see a lot of excitement already on the architecture, which I think is really good because it's our next step. And we planned a Q&A just after this, but since there are a lot of questions on the architecture already, I would suggest, Johan, perhaps you can provide a very quick overview on the architecture, and then we completely open the floor for discussion on the different functions. I mean, as you see, all is new. I mean, if you go to GitHub, I was receiving some messages from Roland, is all empty, right? So we will be working during August on all of this. And well, since we have your contacts, I mean, at a certain point, we will also ping all of you when things get ready. So Johan, please go ahead with the architecture, and then we open the floor for any questions and actually the discussion.
Thank you, Jordi. So my name is Johan Mika. I'm working for the S Group. You might know that we released some month ago a 5G broadcast reception platform, Ubeka. And I also would start first thanking Jordi and Thomas for starting and driving this initiative, which I think is very important, and that hopefully will boost up the enhancement of the 5G media ecosystem here. And I would like to go a little bit more into detail about the architectural aspects. So from the idea, what we would like to do here is, as you already heard, is the development of an open reference platform for 5G media services. And our initial target would be 3GPP release 16. So we want to have a look on media streaming and 5G broadcast, and especially for 5G broadcast, this means obviously LTE-based 5G terrestrial broadcast. And what we have in mind are that you can use this reference platform for several use cases. So there are some use cases listed here, but they are not all use cases. So everyone is invited to bring in use cases, and that we see how this use case fit into that development, and also bring in existing contributions for that. So for example, TV and radio services, low latency streaming, target advertising, regional local program insertion, hybrid consumption scenarios, and so on. Then there are also several consumption environments we can target here. So for example, outdoor on-the-move consumption for mobile devices. Then there's also this environment, automotive infotainment systems like Android Auto, or also home entertainment ecosystem might be an environment we would like to target here. And from the architecture here, so the following architecture I would like to describe here is just a first draft to introduce a little bit more the ideas here. But for sure, everything will be further defined within the developer group. And there are 3 building blocks from the overall perspective. So 3 main building blocks. So we have the client architecture, the 5G-MC for media streaming and broadcast. Then we have the server head-end building block, the 5G-MS to test services for the purpose. And then there's 5G radio access network, where we want to have a 5G unicast and broadcast emulator of core network and RAN. And beside these 3 blocks, we have different tracks identified. So one is definitely 5G media streaming, and one is 5G broadcast. And there might be another one, the hybrid service, where we want to focus on the seamless services with an app modification. Coming to that, I would like to show you now the architecture, the idea behind it. So when we look on the scope of the 5G-MAG reference tools, there are the 3 building blocks. So we have the head-end, 5G-MS, we have the 5G network emulation part, the 5G RAN and the middleware gateway part, and the 5G-MC part here. And then there are obviously some other parts connected, but now from the current point of view, we would say there are third-party reference tools we would like to reuse or use, but we don't want to put initial focus on here. So there's this content application provider side, might be also content delivery network side here. And on the clients, we have the applications, and the application side. Here we want to use already existing tools. For example, we can use Dash.js or HLS.js or other available applications. So we don't want to focus directly on the application. We want to focus really on the 5G media stuff here. And going more into detail, this means that we have on the content application provider side, the CMAF, HLS, and PEC- content packager. We might have a service management and control system here. And then we have, as I said, the 5G media streaming development track, which is obviously on the head end, the 5G media streaming application function and application server side. We have the unicast network, and on the client side, we'll have this media session handler and stream handler connected over the interfaces to the 5G media streaming aware application. Then there's a second track. The second track is the 5G broadcast development track. And here it comes into the enhanced TV broadcast multicast service center on the head-end side, the broadcast run, and then the enhanced TV 5G broadcast receiver side with the MBMS client and the MBMS API connected to the 5G broadcast aware application. And then there's the third track I mentioned before, which we called here now the OTT development track. And here the idea is that there is an additional component which provides to the application the content without changing the application. And to do that, there should be somehow a cache, and this also might be connected to the 5G media streaming client and the 5G broadcast receiver. So that's more or less the idea of the building blocks. It could be that we divide then the building blocks later on into the different tracks. This is something I think we should discuss into the developer workshops or in the developer meetings. And just to go a little further into details about the client. So what we have to do first is to decide on architectural aspects such as APIs, code language, code reuse. What we definitely want to do is that we are compliant with the existing 3GPP standards, and also for the 5G broadcast with the ETSI standard, which is already there in place. We would also like to identify gaps and report that back. And for interest, we would like to use the streaming OTT format CMAF-HLS, I think at the beginning. And for sure, we should be ensure the forward compatibility beyond the next releases in 3GPP. Same for the server side. So the headend should be used more or less to also insert some test services and test streams to the client. So we would like to develop some basic tools here that we can use. Also some hosting environment for the test material. And again, we want to ensure compliance with existing 3GPP and ETSI standards here. Then we have this radio access network part. So the idea is to have in between an emulator to simulate the core network and RAN, and to get at the end of the day an end-to-end setup where which we can use for tests, demos, proof concepts, trials, and so on. And also other processes for this end-to-end setup, for example, that we integrate the receive process from the ORS or Becker project, gateway and application stuff. Yeah, I think so. That's basically it from an overview as a first draft of the architecture, and hand over to Jordi.
Thank you very much, Johan. So before opening the floor to everybody for discussion on the architecture and the different components, on where you think you could bring resources to contribute and so on, I would like to mention that, well, Daniel dropped due to a problem, but he has circulated already a doodle poll in order to schedule the, let's say, the second meeting for the developers, or the first meeting for the developers group, the second if we count this one. So please feel free to fill in this doodle poll in order that, well, we have an idea who would like to join the next call in September. And as I said, also in the meantime, we will prepare all the tools and we will inform all of you when, for instance, license is published, when you can start requesting, let's say, to become a contributor, and so on and so on. So now I would like to open the floor. I think there are some, there might be some questions, and also perhaps some presentations, or some people that would like to share screen and so on. So let's open the floor. And Thomas, perhaps I would like to ask you if you help me moderating, let's say, this session, as I mean, you know all what's going on in SA4, so let's open the floor for discussing architecture aspects.
Sure, Jordi, yes.
I'll start with a question I just typed into the chat if I could. Wait, I can probably even turn on my video momentarily. So I put on I didn't quite see it. I know we went through the architecture slides pretty quickly, but is there what's the expected content source, the ingest into the 5G media streaming source server side? I don't think I saw that on the slide set.
Yeah, I can speak to this. I mean, what we are expecting is that you have a third-party service that is, for example, a Dash HLS streaming, hopefully segment-based. So that's the first reference idea. I mean, we could also go all the way to having a DVBI reference system, right, where you basically put this also into an envelope. The idea is really that you pick up third-party services and distribute those through 5G and basically build the tooling around this. That's how basically the 5G media streaming and also 5G broadcast is set up. We don't have any specific interest yet, but maybe for the beginning, for the testing, we would use existing reference streams for DVB Dash, for DVBI, and so on and so on. So all good questions. We're not there yet to say exactly that's it. Did it help, Paul? Or do you need to use more specific?
I was muted. Yeah, that's fine. I just I wasn't sure if you were setting up something like a live sim or anything like that that's currently existing for this.
Yeah, and live sim could be a good option, right? As interfacing. We have the tools. We basically just for Dash-based services, for DVB-based services, but obviously, if there is other existing streaming service that we want to basically use as test streams, that's perfectly fine. So up for discussion still, but I believe we have at least some baseline.
Okay, I'm not sure if people have the possibility to raise hand in Zoom. I hear from Thorsten that there is no button actually, but if in that case, please queue on the chat and then we will manage the queue. So Thorsten, I think you have some comments or a question, so please go ahead. In the meantime, I will share, let's say, the architecture so that everybody can see it. So Thorsten. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good. Yeah, I raised this question earlier. I was a bit wondering about this enhanced TV label here, and now it looks like kind of that 5G broadcast is a complete separate component, meaning kind of whenever unicast is used, then 5G media streaming is used, and the NTV 5G broadcast receiver on the right side can only do broadcast reception. But of course, in specs, the MBMS user services can be used for both. So in that sense, I just want to kind of raise this question, kind of, is it when interactive services, so combinations of broadcast and unicast are used, is it then always necessary to have an 5G media streaming head-end and an NTV 5G BC BMSC head-end component and the same two components on the right side? Or is it possible that things are integrated in the NTV 5G BC receiver? And this is of course just a question, not a comment.
Yes, okay. So Thorsten, I think those questions are valid in a sense that we need to check the details here. I believe we have and maybe I hand it over to Johan, who has a relatively concrete ideas based on their efforts. So maybe Johan, you want to speak?
Maybe I jump into here. I mean, maybe it's misleading that we have here NTV, but the idea here is there are existing, I would say, models in the architecture, in the 3GPP specifications, And what we would like to build up here is, on one hand, the 5G media streaming stuff. And on the other side, we would like to have reference tools also for the enhanced TV 5G broadcast end-to-end. But for sure, it's possible to combine them somehow. There are interfaces in between. This should be a topic to be discussed in the developer meetings when we know where you want to focus on. But from our point of view, if you are focusing on an enhanced TV, high power, high tower, dedicated broadcast, for example, then you have an reception block at the receiver side, which you can more or less also build up standalone, as well as from the head-end point of view. But for sure, you can also combine that, and there are some interactions in between. What our focus, I mean, I have also some slides. What's our roadmap in here, because we also would like to contribute, as you can imagine, to this 5G-MAG reference tools project. Our focus would be also on hybrid seamless integrations that you can combine OTT, so broadband, 5G broadcast, and also 5G media streaming. So that's something what's interesting, I think, also for the broadcasters and for the broadcast network operator point of view. Does this help, or?
Yeah, it's of course then still a question. There's a bit of an overlap. So for instance, on the right side, the MDMS API, it might serve content which is received via unicast, so not necessarily adjusted into M1, M2. But I think this is more details than to be sorted out. I think I understood you now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I have seen some hands, but some hands has disappeared. So the one is Cedric. So hello, Cedric.
Yes, I have one question. Currently, between the MBMS client and the MBMS user service, there is no name for the link. So that means there is no standardization in between. It seems the link is not. What kind of link you've got between the MBMS client and the MBMS user services? What kind of APIs you expect or interface?
I think there are links in between, but we did not wrote it down, because we just wrote it down the interfaces which are going out to the third-party reference tool. But yeah, you have these service barriers in between the broadcast multicast service center and the receiver. So it can be found in the standard. It's a little bit difficult because it's a really high-level perspective. I mean, we can go really into details if you want, but I think it's it's not a good idea to open up that all the layers below, but it's definitely in the standards.
Yeah, and at some point of time, I have prepared a few additional slides, what I consider being a good first reference for maybe the next step of implementation. I'm going to bring this up whenever there is a gap, and if there is not, we pick it up at another time. So basically explaining a bit, maybe going a bit into the details of what is meant here. To be honest, I let Johan draw that diagram, understanding the specs we wrote in 3GPP. And I purposely did as little changes as possible, because once in a while it exposes how somebody understands our specifications. And if not everything is perfect, I think we should not blame Johan, but we should blame ourselves who have written the specifications to not have done a better job, Johan, being able to read it without needing us to explain it to him. But the end, that is secondary, because it's not about fixing the specs or fixing these pieces primarily. That can be an afterthought. It's about getting some tangible assets being moved forward, right?
I see. So before we jump to your slides, Thomas, perhaps I see Bram from maybe you, my colleague. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jordi. The architecture is not shared anymore, so I will do it from the top of my head. But I see there is a direct link to the cache from the CDN, and then there are separated cache ingest through the MGMS clients and the receiver. So I'm wondering why the separation is made and how I should interpret this also with functionalities created as a network slice, if that's then part of differentiated from a CDN functionality. Does that make sense, the questions? Or
Yes, I can maybe also comment on this. So this hybrid service application is more or less one of our interests, what we want to focus here. And there is this direct connection between the cache hybrid service application and the CDN, because it's more or less OTT. So it's not using network slices, it's not using 5G media streaming, it's more or less an OTT connections, can be also every internet connection. And the idea here is that regardless of the input, you can combine the internet OTT input with the 5G broadcast signal and provide a seamless experience to the application which is on top. And that's then the OTT link between the application and the cache on the right side. Because the idea is to reuse existing applications. And if you don't want every broadcaster or every media provider which is providing a media app to implement the 5G media streaming aware application stuff or the 5G broadcast aware application stuff, means touching every application and adding there the MBMS API or the M6, M7 interface. If you just want to use the existing app, then the idea is to, at least our idea is to change just the CDN endpoint and to point this endpoint from the application side, from the CDN directly to the middleware, and let the middleware do the job in switching between 5G media streaming, 5G broadcast, and can also be then OTT. That's the idea.
So the CDN is your baseline, so to say, and the other ones are where you develop new functionalities on.
Yeah, so the idea more or less in this case is that you have one origin. I mean, I have also some slides about that, maybe for later on, but that you have one origin, and the origin is serving the content delivery network and the 5G broadcast core. And regarding on the coverage or other aspects, costs or whatever, you can then use either the CDN or the 5G broadcast endpoint, let's say like that. And the middleware should take care of that then, because we don't have to change the application or not touch the existing application.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bram. So I see Richard.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Richard, go ahead.
Oh, great. Hi there. Yes. Actually, that explanation was very helpful. It's helped to explain something that I was a bit confused about, actually. So if I understand correctly, when you're using this hybrid service application on the client side, the big green blob on the right, is effectively, does that effectively subsume the 5G-MS aware application and the broadcast aware application? I'm just wondering if that might be a better way of drawing it with those things inside the green box, because those are effectively, they become part of the middleware, don't they?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we also have this question, as Thomas mentioned, we are coming from the use case side, and we try at the moment to develop exactly this use case, that we have one origin, the CDN point of view and the 5G broadcast. And what we have here to investigate, how can the MBMS API, for example, help the application? I mean, do we really need that? I think there is some kind of transparent where you don't need it, but there are also for sure some use cases where you need it from the application point of view. And this is something where you want to focus on within the next month, also to develop that use case and see if you need it, what we need, which parts we need, and if there are any other parts from an API point of view which are missing. So
yeah.
That's a good question, but I cannot answer that.
I think the basic problem is that it's very hard to draw it all on one diagram. I think you might need two diagrams, one for the hybrid case and one for the non-hybrid case.
That's a good advice, yeah.
Yeah, I think that there is work to be done, so that's really good. Are there more questions, more comments? More, I mean, even curiosity, suggestions, feedback, I think is useful. If not, I heard from Thomas that there might be some slides that you would like to show. I think Johan may have also something to show. Perhaps it's a good moment.
Yeah, Hori, maybe I share a few slides that I produced together with Romain from Motion Spell, so 5G-MAG. And Romain is unfortunately not available today. He had a short notice, other personal matter. But this is again pointing a bit, maybe explaining a bit how we view it and what would be parts of contributions we would like to do. I'm focusing right now more on the ENTV 5G broadcast receiver and potentially on the head end as well. And so what I believe, and that also is pointed to by the ETSI specification, is the document from spec 347, which talks about the APIs, but not only the APIs, there's a reference description of the MBMS client included here. So now specifically, some people may say this is MBMS only, but that is basically the reference architecture that probably also helps us to then bootstrap the 5G media streaming details and so on and so on. So the basic idea is really that you have an entry point that is here through XMB, or it would be M1, M2 on the 5G media streaming case, so very specific interfaces. Then you have obviously the interface between a BMSC and an MBMS client. 26346 provides this. That was the question asked by Cedric previously, that basically that would define this interface. And then you basically have the APIs that are here towards the application. There's two sets of APIs explained here on the left-hand side. It's basically more a service level API, which obviously is good and interesting to implement. It's not, the complexity of this implementation should not be that high, but it basically documents how an application can communicate with an app. This is also supported in Android, so there's Android APIs, but obviously the functionality below would need the implementation. So basically, this document here provides a description of the functions of an MBMS client, how it uses information being received through this BMSC interface, the USD services, the interpretation of the USD and so on. And basically it defines also the methods how an application can basically access the service. And then there is a second interface that is called the data interface in clause 7. That basically tells how you can shield the broadcast or MBMS delivery to the application by virtually setting up a local proxy or a server that interfaces and basically does the caching logic. So this is basically now 346 here is not exclusively broadcast, it also supports unicast. So there's a bit of questions where you implement the unicast broadcast switching logic and so on and so on. Surely something for discussion that needs to be checked in the architecture. There's also a set of implementation guidelines for Dash over MBMS that probably can also be used for supporting the unicast. There's a description here. I don't want to go into the details, but basically it points to different unicast broadcast cases. One is more where you want to do service coverage enhancement. Another one is where you can basically replace components and so on and so on. And there's a detailed description how you would set up this up, specification text being available. So now that was more as an intro. Romain basically provided some overview on what contributions are expected to be available. He basically maintains the open 5G-MAG software, This is an LGPL license, so it's not compatible with what we have now. So we need to check what's this. But I mean, we're not changing this. But it's basically for the specs for 5G-MAG, we basically would need the inputs for these different formats. We are looking, there's a root reference implementation available. I understand that MBMS today is flute-centric, but it's not that much different. So we basically need to check if we can integrate this. And then you can set up media pipelines here including FFmpeg. You can basically use a gateway approach in order to translate broadcast into a -HLS format at the client. So there's new developments necessary that basically build on integrating these functionalities into the specification, building these APIs and interfaces, making sure that the data interfaces are supported, and so on and so on. So this is the plan where we basically would like to contribute into the project. There is, I said, I had a reference to these sections here. It might need some updates, for example, also to a -JS to operate with the APIs that are available from 5G broadcast, and then using the examples in NXE for hybrid service delivery. And one of the aspects that is maybe a bit forward-looking, but is these low latency aspects which are relevant. So I wanted to share this. This is the plan for our contributions, but obviously, before we do the enhancements, we need to basically make sure that we get the baseline system in place, and then the enhancement can be on top of this. I stop here. Maybe there's some questions around what is presented here.
Are there questions, comments to Thomas from the audience?
Yeah,
Bram, I see you.
Yeah. So, Thomas, I'm not sure if you cover this area, so it's a bit of an open question. If the application needs to be aware that content, if we look at the architecture, that content is signaled through the MBMS or through the 5G available services, or through the CDN, at least the application needs to be aware where it needs to collect content from.
Yeah.
How do you, is it part of what you want to contribute to? How do you envision this? I know you're working on DVBI also. Is this something DVBI could be helpful for? How do you see that the application is aware what the actual location is, for which cache they can pull it from?
Yeah. Good question. Basically, that's why it's called MBMS aware application. So there is basically a bootstrapping here that basically says there's a service available, and then you can launch the service by this API to the interface, right? So now this application can, for example, be DVBI, right? So that it's a DVBI service list where you find and bootstrap from here on. I mean, DVBI over 5G is also work. It's initiated in DVB. That could contribute to define this and could be one of these applications. So I'm not saying DVBI is the application, but it's probably one application framework that can be extended here. But it should also work with generic apps that are maybe not standardized, right? So these apps would have a minimum amount of extensions to support communicating and identifying services. So that's more the control API aspects, launching service. The media format aspect should really be compatible with existing players in order to avoid that you need to have a new media client being implemented in your application. And then the hybrid aspects are also simplified by this purpose. The question is, where is the hybrid managed? Is it managed in the MBMS client, or is the hybrid managed in the application? That is surely something that is something we need to discuss, but maybe for our implementations, it will not matter that much as long as we support it, right? So how the hybrid is exactly implemented.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Bram. Thomas, I see hand from Richard.
Hi, yes, thank you. So thanks for that, Thomas. you mentioned some existing components available for doing packaging. You mentioned GPAC, and later on you mentioned Root as a protocol as well. And then later on you mentioned baseline and enhancements or something. I think. Do you consider Root as an enhancement, and would that mean that some basic flute implementation would be the baseline requirement here?
Richard, well, I can only speak what I can commit to do. I right now, right? So I mean, Qualcomm has an MBMS client internally that is release 12 based, and we're checking whether we implement it further. This is not what we're contributing right now. We're trying to leverage tools that already exist, right? I'm not. I know there's an open source Flute client. We are not committed to contribute Flute today, but potentially some reuse of existing Flute clients would be great. I can just tell you what I'm able to commit to do, but obviously it would be good to understand how we get to a baseline MBMS client, for example, having a baseline Flute, right?
Yeah, but basically you're identifying a gap that you're expecting others to fill. That's fair enough.
More or less, right? I mean, what we know, as said, there's an open source Root, a Flute receiver that could be checked if it is sufficient to address this.
I think it's very interesting to explore the option of Root as an alternative to Flute as well, because that's a bit more forward-looking as well, isn't it?
So thank you, Richard, Thomas. Are there more questions, more comments? If not the case, Johan, I was not sure if you have prepared some additional slides that you would also like to show to the group.
Yes. I also have prepared some slides about the contribution from ORS. If it's okay, then I would like to present it now.
Sure.
Okay, great. So our contribution and our roadmap, just a little overview about that. So the idea is to give you a little bit an idea about the roadmap first. So as you might know, we released this year our OPECA receive process for 5G broadcast. This was based on SRS LTE. And then we started discussions and the setup of the 5G-MAG reference tools. And we understood that we need here another license type that a lot of more people can contribute. This would be the 5G-MAG public license. So it was necessary in the meantime to also rewrite some components to make that compatible, the further development from our point of view, especially including a complete new rewritten Flute LC encoder decoder. We are now today just some days before we would release the gateway or middleware stuff for 5G broadcast for the OPECA project. It will be initially licensed under the HEPL license, but we would like to put the Flute ALC decoder and encoder under the 5G-MAG public license. The idea is to do that next week. Let's see. And then when everything is set up and ready, we would like to integrate the OPECA gateway process then into the 5G MC part under the 5G-MAG public license. And then within the next month, we would like to concentrate on several use cases. So we have here low latency streaming in mind. There are some parts to do from the transmitter point of view, but also on the reception part to enable that. Basically, this MPEG-4 support has to be included. Then we would like to focus on this hybrid approach, seamless streaming for MBMS-aware applications, where we can connect that. I will come to that in a minute. And the flexible provisioning mechanism. I've called it here Provocant 5G Broadcast on Demand. And we would also like to implement that here in this 5G-MAG 5G media client. But we also would like to further bug fix and develop features for the OPECA receive process, or if you find a solution here to better integrate that in the 5G-MAG project. For the seamless streaming part, I also already talked about that before. So what we would like to build up here is a hybrid scenario. So that the scenario here is that the packager serves the CDN and the 5G broadcast. The user changes, so this is the user device more or less changes between broadcast and broadband coverage. And the middleware should then, and this is what we want to explore, the middleware should then synchronize manifests and segments between both worlds and provide the application which is on top and stable single stream. And then the idea is that the application has a seamless experience as well as the user. That's one thing we would like to explore here. And the second thing is this flexible provisioning mechanism. And this is the idea is that there is some kind of service management in between the CDN and the 5G broadcast, that the middleware reports then what the application is watching, which channel it is. And if a threshold value is reached here, because what I forgot is that the application over the middleware is taking the content from the CDN. And if a threshold is reached, then the service management will dynamically provision over the XMP interface the channel to the 5G broadcast. And then the middleware will move from the CDN to the 5G broadcast endpoint and vice versa. So that's this dynamically provisioning or a flexible provisioning mechanism is also a second thing where we are really interested in. And I stop here. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Sorry, I was double muted. I see Richard. Richard, please go ahead.
Yeah, just on that last point. Yeah, that's very interesting. Is what you're describing as feedback and service management the same as mood?
Not in our case, because in my understanding, mood can just be used if you have some unicast part in the signal. So if you're using FEMPMS or LT-based 5G terrestrial broadcast, and you have 100% dedicated downlink from the 5G broadcast side, there is no feedback in that RAM part, as far as understood.
Okay, so what is yes? Okay, so what is your feedback mechanism? Is it just a private?
The idea is that the feedback mechanism is kind of an API where the middleware can report back, for example, in RESTful API, back to the service management what's going on there, and then the service management knows where are the people in which region, for example, and if they, for example, it's easier or cheaper or what else, or to put people from the CDN some elsewhere, then there's this dynamical provision stuff. And this in combination with if you have adaptive bit rates where you can switch on or off different qualities, for example, over 5G broadcast or the CDN, this is something we would like to explore how it could work if it's working, because there are, I think, a lot of timing issues and other stuff, especially when it comes to low latency.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's very interesting. But just to ask the second question again, is that private? It's non-standardized, yes?
I think it's not standardized yet.
I think it sounds a bit like consumption reporting, so it might be a bit, of course, kind of, at least in the SA4 consumption reporting, the signal is not sent via RAN, it's sent via any IP-based system. And in your case, it sounds like you are doing mood, but using a CDN for unicast, for interactive, and 5G broadcast via kind of the broadcasting. But I do think that the same mechanisms can be used. It's at least worthwhile studying. Okay, thanks.
I agree.
Very well. Thorsten, okay, you are done. I see Roland.
Yeah, thanks, Johan. Just to be very clear, I have to confess I'm a bit slightly confused. This picture is about one or two networks. Are we talking about a 5G broadcast high power network independent from a cellular network, which is delivering the content through a CDN OTT mechanism to a smartphone, for example? Or is it just, so to say, a mechanism that's integrated in one cellular network?
No, this is separate. you can use it separate from the idea. So you have your 5G broadcast high power network, for example, and then you have your CDN endpoint. Can be also every CDN, can be Akamai, or I don't know what you want to use. And as long as you have the same packager behind, because then you will get the same OTT segments here, and the middleware. The idea is that the middleware that can then synchronize somehow that and provide that as one point to the application.
Okay, understood. But doesn't that mean necessarily that the 5G broadcast signal has to be on air all the time? And if so, then why you would go through CDN anyway?
No, the idea is that you just put this channel on if it's, for example, an event channel, or you have that you just put it on the 5G broadcast if there are a lot of users watching in that region, and if the users if the event is over, they can then use this, let's say, free frequency resource there beside the 24/7 channels for another event, for example. That's a little bit the idea. So the 5G broadcast network is working here a little bit like a CDN.
Okay, good, thanks.
So could I just suggest that the cloud at the bottom of the diagram is labeled 5G broadcast, because that's the 5G broadcast network. And the thing that's labeled 5G broadcast is the 5G broadcast head end, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, that's the 5G broadcast core, you're right.
Yeah, and then the cloud at the top is basically your cellular network, and that should extend to include the feedback as well, presumably. So that cloud should go under both those arrows, or on top, or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. We can add that for sure.
That might help Roland's question, I think.
Are there more questions, comments? I mean, we are very good in time, so feel free to speak. If not, I don't know, Thomas or Johan, if from your side you have more elements that you would like to cover today.
Ori, I think it's good to have a first impression what needs to be done, and I understand from my fellow GP colleagues that it looks like we're doing things that are old, right? But I think we need to create a baseline, so that is important. I'm very grateful to our colleagues from ORS to have this, that we do something that is based on release 16. I also look forward that it helps us in discussions moving forward for the next releases. Having said this, obviously we have a bit of a roadmap among us where we said, what do we want to get done? We have an idea for maybe doing something for the IBC, depending on, can we demonstrate, would it be there? That we have a first set of demonstration environment available. What I still believe we should check, maybe we should hand back to Daniel, that Daniel explains a bit how he views the next steps, and then how we can concretely collect input, right? So that would be probably very important in order to get contributions and kind of spur contributions, right? And maybe Daniel has a few ideas on how we can kick this off.
Very well, Thomas. Before I see two hands, and I also want to mention that exactly we want to start from somewhere, and somewhere is release 16, and the idea is, of course, to evolve this. So this is not that then we do. I mean, ideally, we should not do just one thing and then close it. The idea is to evolve over time, evolve over the specs, but we need to start from somewhere. So I guess we go Sesh and then Luca. So Sesh, please go ahead.
Thanks, Jordi. So for the background of most folks here, I'm with Sinclair Broadcast and One Media. We're a US broadcaster that's leading the charge in the deployment of a broadcast standard that's not 3GPP ATSC3 in the US. But I will tell you one thing that I really applaud, starting this activity now, because as we've been spearheading this in the US, and when you start to mix up, broadcast with OTT, with mobile broadband and with Wi-Fi. You know, every time you develop something, you realize that there are 5 more things that you have forgotten about. And so I think, you know, getting started early is extremely important. It's also extremely important to have the stakeholders, that is the broadcasters and content people, very tightly integrated into this, because it's the end of the day, it's the use cases that are needed and specified is what's going to make this successful. And one of the things we're finding, especially that what you're carrying here is probably the highest value of content. Okay, we're talking about live sports. We're talking about live and breaking news. You're talking about now more and more adding things like gamification. So when you start to add those things, you will see that starting this activity today, you know, I'd say that you know it's not too late. It's doing things at the right time. So I just applaud Jordi, Thomas, and the whole team in terms of the work we've started here. Thanks.
That's very encouraging. Thank you very much, Sej. Let's jump to Luca.
Thanks, Jordi. Short introduction. I'm Luca. I'm working with Professor Reimers here at TU Braunschweig, and we've been doing 5G broadcasts for a couple of years now. I have a question maybe for Johan. So the RAN development in this project, as you showed earlier, it's probably based on SRS RAN. SRS RAN code. So what is missing in the SRS RAN code currently to support Release 16 broadcast? So what is to be done inside the project on this end?
I think we have to move through with the list of features, because just to say Release 16 support is not everything. So we have really to go through the features. I cannot exactly tell you what's missing. It depends which features you're looking for, and then we have to check if it's already there or not. I think the idea of SRS LTE or SRS RAN, to start with that, is because there is already a development. So I'm not sure if we have to stick to that. I would for sure welcome that, because we have already the receiver, and it might be easier to integrate more Release 16 features there, and also upcoming features for other releases. But this is something we have to discuss, I think. I mean, if you can tell us what you are looking for exactly, then we can have a look if it's there or not.
No, it's just I'm interested in if it is fixed on SRS RAN, or if you want to do anything else in the project. I mean, there's lots of stuff you can do, obviously. But yeah, maybe this should be discussed in September or something.
Very well, thank you, Luca and Johan. Actually, this question of September brings us to Daniel again. Daniel, I know you have some final slides actually on the next steps, and I think it's a good moment to go through it.
Perfect. Yeah, sorry all again for dropping. I'm not sure, my MacBook just turned off. Maybe it was too hot. But maybe it's even better to show this slide last, so we can agree on the planning. So you should see the last slide now, which I had for my presentation. So what I definitely want to do is set up the basic development environment. So set up GitHub projects, even if it's just a skeleton at first, and share the relevant links with you. So share it on Slack and share it also on the website. And then we need to check what do we already have. So every project that might be worth checking out, might be worth forking, whatever. And also the project that the ORS already have, which we need to port from their repository to the 5G-MAG group. We should prepare that. Next step would be to identify missing parts and compare to architecture. So we should definitely create issues, create discussion threads for people to start discussing on the architecture, on potential components that are missing and might need to be added, and group those into different projects and define the first milestones. All this should be done ideally until the kickoff meeting in September, so that we have some kind of foundation which we can use to discuss on. And the important thing is, please participate in this doodle we set up. I shared the link in the chat as well. it would be nice if we can find a suitable slot where everyone can participate. I know it's not easy for people from Asia, from USA, and from Europe to agree on a time. So I saw that already, I think 6 or 7 people participated, but there are 75 people in the call, so I think there is definitely more interest here. So let's fill out this doodle poll and check on a potential date. Then, as I mentioned before, it would be good to have some kind of bi-weekly or monthly sync meeting where we align the goals, set the priorities, and also discuss what we did so far. But we can all agree on this in the first kickoff call. And one thing I also want to mention, maybe it would be good to enhance the existing documentation for the code we already have, so people can start set up this on their own machines and try the code we already have, and also help. This will also help people to identify what might be missing.
Thank you, Daniel. So I just pasted the doodle poll on the chat. I think we will circulate. I mean, we plan to keep our website update. Let's say these 5G-MAG / reference tools with also with the videos of today, so that everybody knows what we are planning actually. And then we will also circulate to all of you by email the doodle poll, so that you can let's say make your mind for September. I see a question from Thorsten. Thorsten, go ahead.
Yes, thanks. And this is now a bit of a question or comment on the naming. Here you say a setup of GitHub projects. For instance, for me, this 5G-RAN.xx is a bit misleading. It's more kind of a network emulation or system emulation. So in that sense, it might be worthwhile to discuss names a bit before kind of setting it up. Another thing would be, I would, at least my preference is to understand from the project name whether something is the client side or the server side or system side or so. And currently with this 5G-MC, I believe my initial thinking was, okay, this is a 5G multicast thing, so this is the system side. So in that sense, it might be worthwhile to kind of pick a name where it is becoming from the name, project name, apparent whether something is the client side or the server side. But this is just some thoughts. My comment would be kind of before setting up stuff, maybe think a bit about the project names. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will check what's possible on GitHub, if I can maybe create some kind of discussion thread outside of the projects or the repositories in the group itself, and then we can discuss that in the group, also agree on the naming, because I agree, if once we set up this project, it's not easy to change the name again, because people will have a bad or invalid reference then.
Yes, this will stay, yes.
That's a very good comment to get things done very well from where we start, and also thinking on a further evolution, so that, I mean, if we add more functionalities, that the names are also well, that can be familiar to everyone. So are there more questions? No, I think we are about to close the call for today. Are there more questions, comments? If not, as said, we will be uploading all the information needed in our website. We will also circulate emails to all of you, as we have your emails. Roland.
Yeah, just a very quick one. I mean, I was registering to the GitHub, and I told you that there's nothing in. You said that this will be filled, but also I tried to connect to the Slack. So some difficulty on my side probably, but will you be sending invites for Slack? I think somebody was asking this question before, but just to update that.
We will circulate email with all the, let's say, the instructions, logistics, and please feel free to come back to us if there is any issue on anything. We will resolve everything. As said, everything is new, so there may be some issues still to be resolved. I think we are in good shape to start with very good grounds on September. So in the meantime, feel free to contact us if there is any issue. We will take care of the Slack issue, also the GitHub. And I see a question. Of course, we are going to circulate slides and also the videos of this workshop. Everything will be published on our website, and we will, when we circulate an email to all of you, we will indicate the links and everything. I would like to thank especially Thomas, Johan, and Daniel for all the help organizing this. I would also like to thank our 5G-MAG members for the support on this activity. Also, the non-5G-MAG members that have attended this workshop, and also special thanks to the SA4 people, because I know there was a collision with one of their regular calls, and this has been, well, actually cancelled for 2 hours, and they are jumping now to the 3GPP job. So thank you very much to all of you, and see you soon.